Sequence are 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to PCKC TV, Crafter's Corner. Brought to you by U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop. I am your friendly neighborhood Jelly Bean, and we got lots of great things. I want to announce tomorrow, for the first time in a long time, U.S. Toy will be open. There will be all sorts of new safety regulations, doing the best to keep you safe during this COVID-19. But please do come and visit us. We'd like to help you out with any of your crafting needs. If you're looking to complete some of these cosplay projects at home, we have the supplies you need there at U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop. We'd also like to thank our other sponsors here at Planet Comic Con. Definitely all of the fine companies that you see listed there. They're just fantastic in helping to bring the largest Comic Con in the Kansas City area to you. And we're glad that they're a part of the team and glad to be a part of their team. Now, today, we've got a great big friend of mine that, right there, you can see all the creative stuff that they puts together as Brass Engine Creations. He also has a game company called Brass Engine Games and a Facebook group called Brass Engineers, where you can find out his inner thoughts and the things that are going on in his world. We've got Ben Watkins with us today, and he is, right there. Ben, it's good to see you, my friend. It's been a minute.
Hey, Jelly Bean. What's going on?
Yeah. Hey, not a whole lot. I just want to clear the air here real quick, just because some people are going to ask.
Okay.
Are you or are you not Steampunk Chuck Norris?
How did I know that was going to be your first question?
Very first question. I won't make you be on the spot here. I know you like to keep that air of mystery and keep people guessing, just like a trained ninja might do. But I know you got some notoriety as the Steampunk Chuck Norris for your character Judge Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Back in the day with steampunk. That's been a while. How long have you been doing costumes?
Oh, geez. That's a really great question. And I think the last time I counted the number of years, it was 17 or 18 years of doing costumes just on my own.
Uh-huh. So where did you get started? Why did you get the passion?
Oh, man. So I got the costume bug really, really early on. Halloween was my favorite holiday ever. And every year I would drive my mom crazy by asking for these really weird out there costumes that nobody else is doing. I didn't just pick something from the store. I had to have something that was different. And so, like in the 90s, I didn't want to be Spider-Man. I wanted to be the Scarlet Spider. And so my mom had to figure out how to make a Spider-Man mask because there weren't any patterns for those types of masks. And we just had to look at the comic and sort of figure it out. And so she taught me how to sew, and she taught me a lot about how to break down designs and how to figure out how things go together and why they go together the way they do. And then Star Wars was sort of my entry into making costumes by myself and constructing lightsabers out of plumbing parts and sewing pieces together and using found pieces and doing a lot of original character stuff, which then led into doing Mandalorian armors and learning about plastics and buckets and like doing all of that stuff. And I made 2 sets of Mandalorian armor, and then it just snowballs from there. And I just wanted to try every single medium I could get my hands on to make a costume. And eventually it led to, well, where I am now.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about where you are now. You do a lot of commissions, especially with 3D printing and leather work.
Yeah.
So is that the only thing that you do for work? Is you're just a creator or a craftsperson?
No, I mean, I have a day job. I teach at the University of Missouri Columbia as an instructor for the architectural department, teaching building systems laboratory, which is a really fancy way of saying wood and metal shop for architecture students. So I teach them how to make small furnishings and model building and the practical design elements that they need in order to become better designers.
So, do you use the 3D modeling uh, programs that we're going to be using today in your work there?
No, no,
No? Okay.
I taught myself 3D modeling when I approached my Talion project, which was from Shadow of Mordor video game, Lord of the Rings character, and
Nerd.
I didn't want to build the swords and the accessories out of foam. I was at a point where I wanted to do something different, and I wanted the swords to look as real as possible. And I knew that 3D printing and 3D modeling was going to be the way to go. And so I just dove headfirst into figuring out 3D modeling. And to note, there weren't any YouTube videos telling you how to make a sword, and so I just had to use various techniques that I could find in order to figure out how to make a sword, and I feel like it was a relative success.
Right on. So, do you think you could walk us through how you go about creating some of these projects here in just a second?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. We'll bring up an extra screen for you to work on, so on and so forth. But first, I want to remind people for U.S. Toy, Costume, and Magic is open tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Come on and see me. I'll be there all that entire time. And we've got brand new safety regulations. We will be broadcasting live on Facebook throughout the day. We want to show off some of the great new products, including the Rockstar wigs we've got in place. They're front lace wigs, often designed for a lot of your anime-inspired characters. And so we're going to have a lot of fun with these wigs and getting them out and talking about them. And so we'll probably do a live stream tomorrow just talking about the wigs. But we want you to come on down, see them firsthand, and see if we can help you out with your next cosplay. So, Ben.
Yes.
What would be like a really simple project that someone could wrap their head around? Wow, those are beautiful. That's the Talion cosplay, and then Old Man Link there.
Yep. These two cosplay projects were my most recent that involved a lot of 3D printing, and going from one to the next, it was different methodology of how to put it together and using some similar techniques, but then also, Old Link was go big or go home, and so with Talion, it was a lot of small accessories, and the swords were very accurate as far as life size, whereas Old Link was sort of larger than life, and so I had to figure out how to print really really big things. That shield is insanely huge. It's actually sitting in the room behind me, and then I have a detail shot of Talion's two swords, just to show people kind of how they turned out with the 3D printing and the paint job that I was able to achieve.
All right, I got a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
Where did you find the shoes, and so on and so forth? Like,
so
how much of that is bought? How much did you create?
Oh man. So in both cases, in both of these cosplays, I built everything from scratch. I think the only things that I bought were the wig for Talion and the ears for Link, and I think I bought the leather gloves for Link because they were just really easy leather gloves. But everything else was made from scratch, including the shoes. So I for Old Link, I made leather turn shoes, which is basically old Viking or medieval way of making leather shoes, and so they kind of fit more like slippers. And then for Talion, I broke down some old costume pirate boots that were super cheap, and then sort of rebuilt leather on top of it to make them into the boots as accurate to the game as I could get.
You're such a crafty nerd. Golly. And both those costumes won prizes at Planet Comic Con.
Yes. In 2018, Talion got Best in Show at Planet, and in 2019, Old Link got the best in the master's class mixed media category.
Right on. Okay, so I notice right there you've got a batarang.
Yeah.
Is that where you're going to start us off in teaching a little bit about 3D modeling?
Yes.
Okay.
This would represent probably the quickest and easiest project that you could put together in 3D. Now, before I dive in, I should explain the software a little bit. This is called Fusion 360, and Fusion 360 will look really expensive if you go to their website, but if you are a hobbyist, you can obtain a license for Fusion 360 for free.
Mhm.
So as long as you make less than 100 grand a year, then you can get a free license to use Fusion 360 for your own personal projects, and as a hobbyist. So you can sell the designs as well if that's something that you want to get into. The program is pretty easy to use, but it is CAD based. If you don't know what CAD is, that's computer aided drafting. It's been used in architecture for umpteen number of years. And basically, you can draw something and then you can extrude that drawing into a three-dimensional shape. Of course, it goes into a lot more depth there, but the idea is that you can create very accurate models down to a fraction of a millimeter to make things fit really well or make sure that they are to scale. Other 3D programs that are free, like Blender, are more of a sculpting program where you have like a lump of clay and you're trying to mush it around until it looks like the thing you want, but the scale might not be precise. You might have to use a different program to get it the size that you really want and make sure that your model is going to print at the size that you want. But starting with a CAD program and using millimeters as your measurement, you can create a very accurate model that your 3D printer will print exactly the size that you have put into the program.
Okay, just real quick though, I'm going to have a fancy computer to run this, right?
Oh, definitely not. I run it on like a 10-year-old laptop and it works fine. The 3D rendering, is pretty much a given as far as your computer capabilities, but almost any modern computer that's been made in the last 10 years can run this program no problem. It might get a little slow if you have a lot of actions going on and you're trying to change something in the distant past of your project, which makes the program very flexible, but it can be resource heavy. But if you're making simple things, it's really, really not bad.
Okay, right on. So walk me through like I'm just starting the project.
Okay,
What do I do?
back up this project here. You can see I'm dragging this thing here is a timeline of the actions that I've taken for this project. It keeps track of everything that I did, and I can hit the play button here, and it's going to go kind of fast. Unfortunately, I can't slow it down, but you'll see different things happen really quickly, and then I'll go back and explain each one and how it was put together. So
Okay.
if I hit play, you see a picture, and then you saw some things happen there. I know that was really fast. I'll play it one more time. Saw a picture, you saw a drawing, and then a 3D model sort of pop up out of nowhere, and then it was gone.
Okay.
So the first thing that I start with is what's called a canvas, and up here, insert canvas. You can place an image into your workspace, and that makes life really easy for tracing things. You can use a different drawing program to draw your elements and then import them. Sometimes it gets a little weird about that, so it's always best to draw natively inside the program. But once you've inserted your image, then you can calibrate your canvas by right-clicking on it, and if you pick 2 points on your image, it tells you an exact millimeter amount of what that distance is or represents. And you can change that number and it will automatically scale your image to whatever size you tell it.
Okay, so I need to at least have a drawing of what I want to be able to do. It can be in 2 dimensions though.
Yep. Two-dimensional image. Of course, you could freehand everything, but because we're cosplayers and we're trying to recreate things that already exist, this is probably the best way to make that happen.
Okay, so does it need to be in a certain format this picture, like a PNG or a
No,
GIF
it'll take pretty much any image file. Yeah,
Okay.
anything that is considered an image file, it'll take it.
Okay.
So since we have that canvas on there, the next step would be to draw on top of that image and create what's called a sketch.
Okay.
So you can see these black dots sitting around the batarang here, and some lines on top of it.
Uh-huh.
Over here at the top, we have create a sketch, and I'm just going to go in for editing mine so you can see what that looks like. It doesn't look very different at the moment, but there's a lot of different drawing tools here, creating lines and curves, rectangles, circles. You can mirror your drawing, creating arcs and splines. I don't want to get too far into sketching because that's like that could be a whole lecture in its own right. But
so well, just riddle me this, Batman. Where do I even start with what tools here? What did you do to get that? Like you said, draw a sketch. What's next?
In here that says create sketch, and it says use sketch mode to create basic geometry. So if you click create sketch, then it'll ask you where do you want to put this sketch, because everything's in 3 dimensions. You can sketch on any of the 3 planes. I would pick the plane that your drawing is on, and then you can take a line and you can start drawing. And you want to create what's called closed shapes. So it doesn't matter what you draw. All that matters is that it's completely closed. So when I hover over these, each shape highlights, and that means that it is closed, and that means that it can be turned into something 3D. But if I had just a couple of lines here, see, there's no shape there. It's not closed because there's no connection between these 2 endpoints. So this cannot be made into something 3D easily.
Okay, so me being pretty thick-headed, I would just open up my graphic. I would draw on the plane that graphic is on, and I would take the tools necessary to make an outline of that graphic.
Yep.
Okay, that's where we start. Okay.
You just want to trace. That's what you want to do. So this shape right here that I've highlighted was me tracing around the outline of the batarang, or what I consider to be the top surface of the batarang. Then you'll see there's an extra shape outside of that, and that represents the bevel, because we know that batarangs have a sharpened edge, and we can see in the image that it has a bevel.
Okay.
So I drew these 2 shapes to then move to the next step, which is what we call extrusion.
Okay. So we have made a sketch, and now we're ready to extrude it.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll show you what the extrusion step looks like.
Okay.
And then I'm going to back up and I'll do it for real. So up here, these major tools here are basically all you use. But the create menu has so many options in it. You can create so many different things, but we're going to stick to the basics. Extrude is the easiest thing that you can do. It adds depth to a closed shape. So it makes it 3D. So if we click on extrude and we click the shape that we want to extrude, then we can click and we can drag this arrow.
And you're just giving it depth right there. Is what you're doing with extruding is giving it depth, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and it tells you in millimeters or centimeters how thick it's going to be.
It is in millimeters. Everything with 3D printing is in millimeters.
Okay.
So staying in millimeters is the best way to go. You can click and drag your mouse to give it a different height, or you can type in the box and give it a very specific height. And then once you hit OK or hit enter on your keyboard, then you have a 3-dimensional shape.
Okay, so do you keep a ruler close to you with millimeters and with centimeters to kind of give yourself a point of reference?
For the most part, I've because I do this so much, I have since memorized, how many millimeters are.
You're one of those guys who does a pinch of this and a little bit of that in every recipe, aren't you?
A little bit.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
There's no shame in bringing up Google. If you bring up Google and just type millimeters to inches, it brings up a calculator and you can enter the millimeters and it'll convert it to inches or vice versa, so that you can get a better idea of what's happening.
Uh-huh.
Is something going on with our sound? I see a comment about sound.
In and out, but that's just more or less the nature of the streaming that we're doing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was all right.
Yeah, you're absolutely good. Absolutely good.
Okay. So so we have this semi-flat 3D shape. Then we want to create the bevel that goes around the outside there. And I think when I originally did this, I tried a few different methods. We're going to stick to something really basic because there are multiple ways to do this bevel. The easiest is what's called a draft. A draft, I'll back it up. A draft allows you to choose a surface and it makes an angle for that planar face. So one face of a 3D object is a planar face, and by selecting draft, you can select that face. If it'll let me. You can select that face and oh, there we go. Okay. You can select that face, and by turning a number of degrees, you can create what's called a draft.
Gotcha.
And that's a CAD term. But see how I can make it much bigger or much smaller, and just depending on what I think looks good is what I would stick with. And I would do that to each area that needs a bevel. It's pretty straightforward, not a real difficult tool.
It takes just a little bit. So the draft there, that's their term. It's like Tokyo Drift, but it's in the past tense. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, yeah, it's like past tense of Tokyo Drift. Sure.
Okay,
we'll go with that.
So do you usually just make that draft connect to the other shape that you made, or what's the dealio?
You'll notice that it does not line up with the other shape there. And I think it's because I decided that the bevel would be a little too wide in that. So this is just what I thought looked good. And that's something that you want to remember as you're 3D modeling. Trust your eyes. If something looks off, it probably is. And just do what you think looks good.
Okay. And so your bevel doesn't have to meet the other thing that you sketched out.
Not necessarily. The other thing I sketched out, and I apologize that might have been confusing because I had drawn this with a different method in mind and then ended up doing something simpler later. So, and that happens too. A lot of this is experimental. And so if you're getting into 3D modeling, just play around with it and just try something, see what happens, and then go, oh, okay, that was cool, or oh no, that didn't work at all.
Okay. And so this took you how long to print out? Like what happens next? Once you got the bevel and everything.
There's only half of a batarang here. The reason that I only drew half of it is because I wanted to make sure that it was symmetrical. And so the next step is what's called a mirror. And mirroring is really, really cool and really, really easy. So up here in our main tools, mirror, if I choose the body that we've created, which is just the name for our 3D shape in the program, they're called bodies. If I select the body and select the midline of the batarang as my mirror plane and hit OK, it mirrors the batarang.
And makes the other side for you. Nice.
And then if I mirror both of those halves, but then select the underside as my mirror plane, then I can double the thickness of my batarang and it'll have a double bevel, which would look really, really professional and really cool. So I'll get rid of the grid and the canvas so you can see this better. Now you can see the two halves and how that looks more like the, you know, what a batarang probably would look like. And those two mirror actions took a second to do.
Okay, now I've got a model of a batarang. How do I mass produce these things? Because I've got crime to fight in Gotham City.
So once you've completed your model, you can right click on it and there's an option to save it as an STL file. STL is a universal file type that 3D printers will read and then print. So once you have an STL file, then you would take it into what's called a slicing program, which breaks down the model into code to tell the 3D printer what to do in order to build that object.
Nice. That's just absolutely fantastic. All right, I'm going to ask us to move on to another thing here, but I want to take a quick second here, Dustin, and I want to remind people that tomorrow US Toy Magic and Costume Shop is open. Hey, take a look right there on Mel's face. You see those silicone masks? We've got a wide variety of those guys. They're reusable. They stick right to your face without any extra adhesives. So if you are doing a superhero cosplay, if you're going to be Robin, like you see on Mel's face right there, and you're printing out these batarangs, that's going to be your best face mask. Come on in and see me. I've got Catwoman designs. I've got Batman designs. I've got Robin designs. We've got all sorts of designs. The Mr. Incredible masks from the Incredibles. We've got those designs. So come on in and see us for those little silicone masks. They're a brand new product at US Toy, and we're excited. And I'll do another video about them tomorrow. But Ben, you've got what's the? Oh my gosh, are we going to make lightsabers?
You can make a lightsaber in Fusion 360. This is the most recent one that I created. It's called Peace and Justice. It is based on a real lightsaber design from Jedi Fallen Order, which is an Xbox game. Mm-hmm. They also use very similar parts at the lightsaber shop at Disney World. Okay. Of course, I did not make mine exact to Disney's plans because I don't have access to those sabers, but it is inspired by that same design and similar terminology.
Right on. Before we get into this, I do want to say, hey, John Kipp, it's good to see you. Kristen, it's great to see you. Tim, hi. John Fincher, it's good to see you as well. Elliot Blue, I hope we're getting you started on some of the things that you want to do with 3D printing. Now, if you guys have questions, please do type them into the chat because Dustin and I are watching that chat. Oh, I didn't even say hi to Dustin Evans. He is my Chewbacca smell-alike. He's behind the scenes. We want to thank Dustin Evans Photography for producing and being the man behind the cameras and making sure this entire thing works. But if you've got any questions for Ben, please go ahead and put them in that chat, and we will get to them as soon as possible. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ben. You're telling us how we're going to be able to protect the galaxy as Jedis.
Yes. Also to comment on Jonathan Kipp's comment there, a 3D metal printer is really cool if you've got about $30,000 in your pocket, if you want to print in metal.
Mm-hmm.
So with lightsabers, they're cylindrical, which makes them really, they're easy, but also they have some complexities. The complexities come in with the details around buttons and textures and things like that, especially the emitter end with these little fin things here. That was an interesting process. I'm going to walk through just a few of the things I did. I'm not going to go into as much detail because that would basically use up the rest of our time. Mm-hmm. But basically, in the first example, we were using Extrude. With lightsabers, we use an action called Revolve. And Revolve takes a drawing that you've done and rotates it around an axis and creates a cylindrical shape out of that drawing. So I'm going to hide the bodies, and you can see this giant list that popped up here. These are all the sketches I made just for that lightsaber.
Oh my gosh.
One of the first sketches I made. Looks really, really simple. But when we go to revolve and we select all those shapes and we select the bottom line as our axis, then we can click and drag. Oops. It's like, hey, things you're doing is not visible. There we go. Then you can click and drag your mouse, and you'll notice that it takes my shape and rotates it around as far as I want it to. I can create a quarter of a lightsaber or a half of a lightsaber, depending on what I'm doing, or I can just create a whole 360-degree shape. And from that simple sketch of a bunch of rectangles, now I have this super complex textured cylinder.
That was sweet. It was like taking just a plain board and turning it into a lathe, on a lathe into.
Yeah.
That was really, really sweet how quick and easy that was. And so you did a bunch of those little parts and joined them together to make a lightsaber. Is that essentially what's going on?
That is essentially what I did. Some
Okay.
things that I did was called Phillips and Chamfers. These are things that just make the model look nice. So these two tools up here, if I go to chamfer and I select one of my edges and I click and drag, you'll notice that I can create an angle, and it creates the angle around the entire object. So now it has a slightly different profile. I didn't have to draw that. I was able to just draw rectangles really quickly and then use the chamfer and filleting tools to make things look either round or angled.
So that's kind of like the drafting that we saw with the battering, but in 3D on a circle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, drafting would look quite different on this kind of model. Probably not something that we'd want to do, but fillet and chamfering is just a way to soften your edges and make your model look nicer.
Okay, excellent. What's next? What's next?
All right, let me undo that stuff. Let's go to, where am I at here? Let's find.
Hey, Dustin, while he's looking, can you post up in the chat again? Ben's doing Modeling Mondays, where he gets on Twitch and he does a lot of this work, and you can tune in and you can talk to him because he's just giving us an overview in our hours of time here. But he takes 2-3 hours on Monday nights to show off quite a bit more in depth about what's going on. And we'd love you guys to tune into that and get yourself set up with design. And you can either work. Ben, do you print things for people after they've designed them?
If they want me to print something, then that is within the realm of possibility.
Okay.
It is. I will only 3D print kits, so I'll only 3D print the raw parts and then send them to you. I don't do finished props anymore. Unfortunately, they take a lot of labor and love that just goes outside the budget sometimes.
I get you. And you know, if people are looking for other things, if you're not available, they can go to Hammerspace and get some of the printing done. They can send it to that as well. Yep. But they can get help from you just by calling you up and charging a little bit on their phone for help and services, right? Or can you design stuff for them and send them a file?
I have done designs and have sent files. That is also within the realm of possibility. I don't mind doing that. I also most of the designs I make, I also put up on CG Trader. They'll also be going up on Etsy soon-ish once I get the bugs worked out with renders and stuff. Because Etsy requires really big images, and so. But anyway, so they'll be up on Etsy. They're up on CG Trader, where you can buy the models that I make. So the lightsaber that you're looking at right now will be for sale, and it is in pieces. And the more lightsabers I make, you can swap out pieces. So if you buy more than one model, you could take the emitter from one and the handle from another, and put those two together and print those parts and customize your own lightsaber from the parts that I design.
Sweet. All right, let's see what you're working on. Show us something new.
So this is where the emitter came from. So you'll notice all those fin looking things there.
Mhm.
And and these shapes here. Basically, now I think this might have been a slightly older sketch, but the process is the same. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna delete most of what we've got going on here. Oh, come on. Yes, I know. It's going to be angry at me for a minute.
Because it's got to re-render all that stuff.
Well, when you start deleting things that have later actions that it affects, then it gets...
Gotcha.
So let's say that...
Okay. You're messing with the time and space stream, Ben. Huh? There's all sorts... You're messing with time and space by deleting all those parts. That's why it's upset with you. Okay, I get it.
I am messing with time and space. Well, let's say that you had a pattern like our emitter where there's a bunch of these shapes going all the way around. And you'll see that I designed the negative space in between these bridges because of the way that I wanted to do it. But the idea is we're going to create a repeating pattern along a circle. So the original sketch that you saw would be a nightmare to draw that out, right? Because you'd have to do all kinds of sketching to try and make all the pieces look exactly the same. But if I just draw one of them and have these dotted lines, which are called construction lines that you can create, and I go to my, oh, hang on. Let's go into edit sketch. If I go to my sketch menu and I go to circular pattern, I can select the shape that I've created, select the center point that I want it to rotate around, and then I can tell it how many of these I want. So right now the default is 3, so I can up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, 9, 10 of them. See, and each one I add, it just squeezes them closer and closer together until I have the number of them that I want.
And does it automatically? So you don't have to do any thinking.
I didn't have to do anything. All I did was select my shape and a central point that I wanted it to rotate around.
That's sweet. I like it when I don't have to.
Now I have a sketch with 14 identical shapes rotated around an axis. You can also do something similar with what's called a rectangular pattern. It creates the same shape along rows and columns instead of around a circle. But since lightsabers, going around a circle is probably the best way to go. I'm going to undo all that damage I just did. So that was essentially how I created the cavities that made up that shape there. Everything else is basically just revolved cylinders like the original action that we did. And then these cutouts are super easy. Oops, there we go. To get these little vent cutouts, you just draw a shape. And then when you extrude from one object through another object, it will change what it wants to do. So let me make a quick sketch here, and I'll show you what I mean. And we're not going to make this permanent. We're just going to do something random. So let's say that I wanted a hole through that. Why I would, but let's go for it. So I have created this sketch out in 3D space, and if I extrude it through my shape, you'll notice that it turned red. And when it turns red, it changes its operation. So you can tell it to cut through things. You can tell it to join to that shape, or you can keep it as a separate new body, which means it has no interaction with what you're doing right now. Or you can create an intersection, which means it's only going to leave the part of the shape where your two extrusions intersect or interact. So there's lots and lots of options, even with just the extrude command, to create much more complex shapes.
Designs and okay.
Yeah, more complex designs. Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely crazy, Ben. Okay, so when you design a lightsaber with all these different parts.
Yep.
And then you just connect them back together in a larger file. Like, how does that process look like when you're building it?
So you'll notice that here. I'll go ahead and move some of these parts so that you can see them separated. So I'm moving my solid bodies, the things that I want to be interchangeable with my lightsaber. You'll notice that I had some hidden objects in there. Each one has a different number of sides so that you never mix up which part's the emitter and which part's the switch, and they always face the correct direction. But essentially, I created a geometric shape that I cut into one piece, extruded from the other piece, so that I could create a connection. Now, if I wanted this lightsaber to just be one solid piece, I could have these shapes together, and then if I save it as an STL file doesn't keep objects separate, so it would sort of weld everything together automatically. But if I save each of these bodies as an STL, then I would have a separate file that I could print individually. Okay,
so you make one big file and then export as several smaller files.
Yes.
Okay.
In manageable chunks, and the manageable chunks are for my printer size as well, because that's something you have to take into account. Is like when I was making the swords, I could only have so much of a sword blade fit on the printer, so I had to divide up my project into chunks that I knew the printer could handle by being familiar with my printer size. The Talion project was built on a $100 tiny printer that was it was a little workhorse, but it was a DIY kit, and it was not very good.
Nice. Well, hey, real quick, we're coming up at the 45-minute mark, and I want to get into that Talion and see if we can talk about it and the link, because those are so awesome. But first, I do want to go back and say, once again, come visit US Toy Magic and Costume Shop tomorrow. We talked about the Rockstar wigs that are a lot of anime styles that you should come check out. We talked about the superhero masks, but you should also check out our full line of Maron and Ben 9 makeup, because we've got everything you could ask for to set up your cosplay, and we want to talk to you about how to make them right. We also carry Pro Air, and we can teach you how to use Pro Air. You can test it out a little bit in the store, and just really get on the road to take your cosplay to that next level. We want to help you out. We want to help you succeed. So definitely come by and check us out at US Toy Magic and Costume Shop, starting tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. Those are our new hours. We have all sorts of new safety regulations to keep you safe as a shopper. We'll all be wearing masks and gloves and everything else, so you'll see that. Ben, let's talk about Talion and that sword and how that goes. John, once again, real quick, thank you for putting that up. If people go to your Twitch stream on Monday night, they can ask more questions. If you have any questions, please do put it down. I do want to point out Greg Smith right there, Dustin, and Greg saying, well presented, Ben. Haven't used AutoCAD in years, and Fusion 360 looks amazing. So, Greg's one of our favorite from Camp Cosplay, and it's good to see you, Greg, and thanks for tuning in. Before we get away from lightsabers, I need to announce, last week we gave away a 1/1 gold-plated replica of the Yavin 4 medal from from the toy shop. And Clara Cheney, if you're out there, Clara Cheney, we need you to get in contact with Planet Comic Con. I'm going to go in that chat and try to get you there, but we want to get you in touch with that metal from Toinks. So thank you all for tuning in to their May the 4th be with you sale last week. So Clara Cheney, congratulations on winning that prize. So Ben, Talion, those were some awesome swords. Yes,
they were.
So what made them so incredibly unique?
So what made them unique was it was my first time trying to 3D model, and I had to learn how to put a sword together with some pretty advanced techniques without knowing everything. And so it was a really really tough learning experience, because there are some really unique shapes going on with Talion's sword as opposed to something like Link's Master Sword.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a representation of much more advanced modeling. You'll notice that there are a lot more organic shapes going on, lots of curves, lots of cuts, and weird feathers and wings kind of things going on here. And a lot of it had no tutorial whatsoever. You could not find any way of somebody else having done something like this. The only tutorial I was able to find was a guy that made a knife, but it wasn't for 3D printing. It was just, oh, here's how I would model a knife. And I ended up, I think, using maybe one method that he used, but the rest of the methods just weren't going to work for what I needed to do.
You're one of those guys that just likes to see a difficult problem to see if you can make it happen, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, probably. But this particular project uses what's called surface modeling, which is a completely different ballpark from what I've been describing up to this point, because I hadn't even gotten into it, but there are other modes of using the software. We were in design mode, which is basically just for creating solid objects and geometry. Then there's render mode for making things look pretty, animation mode where you can show how things work. Simulation is interesting for engineering projects. Oh, where did it go? I think they updated the app. Now it's gone, and I don't know where it is. Well, anyway, there's somewhere in here. Oh, here it is. Surface modeling. So they just moved it. So surface modeling is where you make a drawing in 3D, and then you draw surfaces between your lines so that you can create very complex shapes.
Okay. I think I got that. Can you show me? Because I'm a visual learner.
Yes. I can't show you on Talion's sword because there's so much going on here that it would bog down my system if I try to change anything.
Okay.
We're going to go to the Master Sword, or the version of the Master Sword that I created.
Okay.
Because it's a lot lighter model as far as how much is going on there. So we're going to find the sketch that exists on. There it is. All right, so I'll turn the so you can see the shape here that I wanted to create. Looks like a little pyramid and this sort of weird S-shaped looking thing, right?
Yeah.
And
I think I drew those when I was in the 5th grade to be cool.
Right? To create this, I tried a couple of different methods. And the first thing I did was I created my S shape, and I tried to extrude it up and then draft angles around to see if I could get it to meet a central point. And it wasn't working because the angles are not equal all the way around the shape. So this was going to require surface modeling. So I had to create my closed S shape. Then I had to create a drawing a distance above it for the center line of that S shape, where I wanted it to come to a point, like a triangle. Then, under my surface modeling tools, I can create a loft, called a loft, and I can select one line from the top and one line from the bottom, and it creates a flat plane between those two lines.
Okay.
And in most cases, if you keep clicking the top and the bottom that it matches to, you can sort of build this shape all the way around. Like that.
Okay, keep going, because I'm seeing it. I'm still a little confused because it looks like I can see where it's supposed to come to a point, but I don't see it coming to a point yet.
Okay. It looks weird whenever I'm clicking through things because it is. Oop, it's not going to do that. Okay. Ah, crap! I lost it. Such as life. So actually, first I'm going to make my two end pieces. And I lost my sketch. One thing about building in Fusion is that if you're not careful, you can lose your sketch because it wants to turn it off as soon as it thinks you're done with it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to create my two end pieces here because those are my triangles, right?
Okay, I see.
Okay, so those are my triangles. Then I can loft, and I'm just going to go from edge to edge, picking the bottom and then the top. And sometimes it'll get mad at you because it doesn't know what you're doing until you've done it. So it's trying to make a guess at what you're doing. Not that one. There we go. Because you see, when I click the bottom, it's trying to guess, like, well, what shape do I want? But then when I pick the top edge, then it's like, oh, okay, I understand what you're doing now. So now I have one half of it, basically.
Yeah. Okay, I see that.
And then I can just go to my other side. And once I start doing the other half, it starts to become really clear how that shape is built.
I see it forming much better this time. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So yeah, just getting used to the tools and knowing how to move yourself around and doing all the clicking. Now you could do these one at a time. I like clicking through as much of it as I can, or as much of it as it'll let me. All right, so let's turn off the sketch so we can get rid of a lot of those lines. Now this looks like a pretty solid object, but if I turn it upside down, you'll see it's still hollow because we are surface modeling. So we're not creating a solid object, we're creating surfaces. So then we want to create a patch, if it'll let me. Nope, it doesn't want to do that. Okay. We're going to create a patch, and we're going to tell it where we want the patch made. So we have to outline the bottom of it because we need this to be solid, right? We don't want just a bunch of floating surfaces. So I have to create a patch in the shape that I tell it I want. So once I've finished closing up that shape, you see how it turned gold. So now it looks like more like a solid object. But over here on the left, you'll see all these orange things. These orange things are the surfaces that I built, and it is still not a solid object. So then when you're done surface modeling something, we have what's called the stitch command. And the stitch command allows you to select all your surfaces. And if you have green lines, you're good. Red lines means there's something wrong with the way you modeled it. But since I modeled this appropriately, it's all green lines. And when I hit OK, now you'll notice all the orange things went away. And now I have one solid body.
Sweet.
Modeled according to my drawing.
Okay, so we've looked over a number of tools within this program. And what's the program again that you're using? It's based on CAD.
Yes,
but...
it's a CAD program called Fusion 360 published by Autodesk, which is the same people that make AutoCAD. And so it is CAD based. It's used for a lot of really complex things. If you're into engineering, it's a really cool tool. But if you just want to do prop building, it has a lot of design tools that are really well built for creating accurately scaled models. And I should mention at this point that this program does have a free-form modeling tool like Blender. So if you're more used to mushing clay around, you can still do that in this program.
Okay. And then once you have those files, they can be exported and sent to a 3D printer or someone who can 3D print. And then it's just a matter of, like, I know the Italian swords, those look pretty long. Do they just stay together as just the plastic? What's the dealio there?
So Italian sword, and I was working on this recently because I was trying to get it ready for selling online, now that it's 2 years old. And basically, it's easier to show you on the Master Sword because you can see these lines here, and that's where the blade is divided into pieces.
Okay.
And you'll notice that on the blade, there's these little tabs. And then on the other end, there's holes where the tabs go. I made the blade hollow because I was trying to use less plastic, because this Master Sword, like I said, is larger than life, and so it's very beefy. And I was trying to reduce some of the weight by creating a hollow bladed sword, and it's still pretty strong. You can hold the sword out horizontal and it doesn't flex with the way that I built it. But basically, the tabs are just for alignment, and then I use a very strong plastic bonding epoxy to put the pieces together.
Okay.
The Italian sword was made solid with 2 holes running down the blade, so that I could take steel or aluminum rods and then put the sections together along these rods and glue it all together. And it worked for the most part, but the metal tended to stretch and shrink just enough in temperature differences that it started to pop the pieces apart. And so that's when I changed my method to just all plastic with no alternate core. In my other sword designs that I have for sale, they're usually solid blade, and then they have what's called hexagonal keys. So just like an Allen wrench shape, and it's just a little hexagonal piece that you print, and then it fits into both blade parts so that it's aligned and sits perfectly and is much easier to glue together.
That's just absolutely fantastic and a great way of dealing with that problem. Ben, we've got just under a minute left, and so we want to say thank you for giving us your time. People should check you out at Brass Engine Creations on Facebook, the Etsy store, Twitter, Instagram, and of course the twitch.com/brassengine. We didn't even get to talk about the board games that you create, but if folks are interested in board games, they should definitely check out the Brass Engine games. You've had a number of successful Kickstarters, and great. It's been great working with you on those card games and seeing those succeed. So thank you definitely for your time. Folks, we are PCKC TV, and this has been your Cosplay Creator Corner. I'm still goofing up that title. I need to get it changed up. But we want to thank you for tuning in today and checking us out. This stream will be live on the Planet on the Planet Facebook page. You can tune in to this video, like, share, subscribe, do all sorts of things with these things. But we want to see you getting this information. You can contact Ben directly if you need something designed. You can contact him to get the kits printed up. You can contact him and say that he's got this funny looking piece of hair at the front of his head. But we also want to tell you, coming up this week, Wednesday, Chris and Bill from Elite Comics are going to be talking with Andy Parks. Andy Parks, of course, just had one of his books turned into a movie on Netflix. Andy also has worked for years with Green Arrow. He's going to be a great guest to interview and have a part of that. So tune in Wednesday night there. Next week here, we're going to have Valkyrie Britannia. She's also been doing some 3D printing, but she's been sending some stuff off overseas, and she makes all those crazy headdresses. And so she's going to be crafting along with us. She and I are getting together tomorrow at US Toy to see and get her the supplies needed to create something unique for us next week. Really looking forward to that conversation. Just wonderful craftspeople. Ben, thank you again for your time. Everyone, go check out his page. Go check out the sites. Check in Monday nights for modeling. And then after you've watched our show, tune in to Ben on Wednesday nights. What are you doing on Wednesday nights?
Leather crafting.
Leatherwork. Oh, yeah. Tell me about those.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla sketchbook, pocket-sized, and a flask holster with a turnip on it styled after Animal Crossing. And these are projects that I do off the cuff on Wednesday nights. I take suggestions from people on what to do and how to put things together, and then they go up for sale after the live stream. And
then you sell them on Etsy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, Wednesday nights are awesome with leatherworking with Ben. Monday is modeling with 3D modeling with Ben. But definitely check out PCKC TV, Talking Comics with Chris and Bill. And this week, Andy Parks. Next week, Sunday, check us out with Valkyrie Britannia. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and share this video. We want to get around. We want people to see all the great stuff coming out of the Kansas City area. Thank you once again. We'll see you next week at 2 p.m. on Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.